As always, thank you for hanging out with First and Pod. We apologize that we're coming to you a day late. Poni took a red eye back from from Vegas to Pittsburgh after Sunday Night Football. I flew in first thing this morning after watching a beating at Arrowhead Stadium that should have been called for cruel and unusual punishment. We will get to those games, but we also have a Monday night doubleheader. Poni, just like last year, feels to me, and we can get to specifics on both teams, but feels to me like the Bengals saved their season in week 3. Joe Burrow did not look great, but he was good enough. Next week, they have the Titans. The week after that, they have the Cardinals. Jamar Chase looked amazing. Pass rush was great. Rams offensive line pathetic. But I fully expect to wake up in 2 weeks with the Bengals at 3-2 and right in the thick of this thing. What about you?
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if Burrow doesn't play on Sunday against Tennessee. Let me start there. Because a short week, I think they were trying to avoid getting 3 games under 500, which is just the Texans did it a few years ago, but nobody comes back from 0-3. And there's already 3 teams in your division that are 2-1. So I think there was that aspect. There was also the payback for the Super Bowl. Like, they weren't going to keep Burrow out, but I wouldn't be surprised if they made a decision here in the next few weeks to sit him down for a game. You know, I had a situation going back 10 years ago with Ben Roethlisberger here in Pittsburgh where he had a banged up foot, but he forced it late in the season against San Francisco because it was a big Monday night game when the 49ers were really good with Harbaugh. And he played and they lost. And then 6 days later, they had a game against a bad Rams team and they sat him and they let Charlie Batch play and they won. So I think there's going to be at some point here, maybe it won't be this Sunday, Danny, but I do think Burrow's going to miss games this season. I'm convinced of that. I don't think he'll play all 17. This whole thing where we're going to do a song and dance every week about did he get number 1 reps in the walkthrough and quarterbacks getting promoted from the practice squad. I just thought tonight was a gotta-have-it game. They gutted it out. It was second half, again, first half, no touchdowns. Jamar Chase got going great. Joe Mixon rushing touchdown. Defense was awesome. The defense didn't give up a third down conversion until the absolute end of the game on that Rams touchdown. But I think they saved their season, but it feels more like a stay of execution for me because of Burrow's calf.
Yeah, I don't know if he can get better while playing. Obviously, Arizona just beat Dallas, but feels like that might be a spot. You know, beat Tennessee, win a game in conference, which could matter for tiebreakers and wild card, and then try to sit an NFC game or something like that in week 5. I could see that. I'll say this, too. You want to talk about a quarterback not going the whole way. I mean, it's the same exact thing as last year with the Rams offensive line. Were they playing 4 offensive linemen? 3? What the hell was that? I mean, that guy's going to get killed if he plays more games behind an offensive line like that. Like to me, like, good job by Cincinnati. Their pass rush was relentless, but they were in there in 2 seconds or less often, man. Like that felt like last year's offensive line for the Rams.
It did. And I look at McVay as the type of coach that can scheme around it, and Stafford can get rid of the ball fast enough to cover up for a leaky offensive line. Pass protection is more about the quarterback than it is about the line itself, but the line is obviously still pretty important. Yeah, I just, that was a game that the Rams, I think, are going to kick themselves on all year. That was there for them. That game was ripe for the taking. And to not win, given the way Stafford had played the first couple of games, Orlovsky makes the comment that Stafford is so good right now that the Rams can win any game they play this year. He said that like within the first few minutes of the game, which I think is, was he in Detroit with Stafford? They got to have some kind of personal relationship, right? And that's got to be.
They have to. I was sound on the Eagles game. I didn't hear the start of that broadcast. And Fowler annoys me as a football play-by-play guy. So I was hanging out
at all levels, or just when he does NFL games.
I think he's very good at tennis. I'm not a huge fan of his work on football, to be honest with you.
Is it a personal thing, or is this just a preference?
No,
Okay.
not at all. I think great studio guy who went from the studio to the number 1 play-by-play gig. And I don't feel like he's got number 1 big game play-by-play chops, just personal preference. He's very good at tennis, though. Is that bad? I mean, you seem offended.
That's an unusual opinion. I haven't heard a lot of
Oh no, he's
hardline
not.
stances on
I don't
Chris
think he's very
Fowler's
good.
play-by-play.
I don't think he's very good. Sean McVay punting on 4th and 5, down 10 with 6 minutes to go.
He's a conservative in-game coach. We've known this about Sean McVay for years. He comes
I
up
know,
with
but can I get an ounce of pushback? Like Fowler goes like, and the Rams are forced to punt here. No, they're not.
No, because Louis Riddick was reminding us, I think, 10 times during the second half that he talked to Andrew Whitworth pre-game. He kept shoehorning that in for no apparent reason.
But I just, okay, great. You use your timeout. You get the ball back. Now you're down 10. There's 3.5 minutes. The only reason you score a touchdown is because there was a broken coverage. Okay, congratulations. That could have happened if you would have converted the 4th and 5. And it ends up you needed an onside kick, which is like 5% to convert. And it's probably, 40% to convert 4th and 5 with Stafford? Just completely idiotic.
One of these networks, whether it's ESPN or Fox or CBS, NBC, they need to start doing a win probability thing that they show before every one of these decisions. And that way, at least you can force your analysts to react to those. Like, here's what a punt does to your win probability.
I feel like, I know. I feel like they did that on the Buck Aikman cast last year, and they just like kept disregarding it. Do you remember that?
I think they owe it to let the viewers at least see it. What the numbers say.
I agree. And I just forced to punt. Is there a new rule that I don't know about where you can't go for it on 4th down? It's just infuriating.
What did you think of the other game?
Well, I mean, I won money on it. Like I told you last week, I liked the Eagles. I don't believe in Tampa. I fundamentally don't believe in them. I just think that they are such a low ceiling team. They can't run the ball. Baker doesn't make explosive plays. They have good players, and like Wirfs is a great tackle. Evans still clearly has a ton of game. Levante David is very good, but not a premium position. Vita Vea is very, very good, but he doesn't make a ton of impact plays. Like they don't have game changers. They've got like very good players at relatively inconsequential positions.
Yeah.
And so when I see them go up against the team with studs at premium positions, and I know like hardcore football people would say Vita Vea absolutely is an impact position. And of course, Tristan Wirfs is an impact position, but like in terms of points on the board, the takeaways, they just don't have those types of guys. So I loved Philly in this spot, and it went about as I expected.
I think it's a little harsh by you on Tampa. I think relative to who they were playing, I agree with you. They're clearly not in the same league as the Eagles. But then again, the team that the Eagles beat in the divisional round of the playoffs last year wasn't either. The Giants didn't deserve to be on the same field as them.
That's right.
So I think that the Buccaneers, I loved Philly in this game, laying the 5.5. Wherever you got it, I thought the line would be fine. I thought you were good. It wasn't.
It was 4.5 for the first 3 days of the week.
Yeah, I thought it was. I thought as long as it didn't go past 7, you were going to be fine in this game. That wouldn't have made a difference anyways. They were in control.
They crushed them
the whole way. Yeah. Let me start with the Philly angle though. I think I picked them to win the Super Bowl this year. So this is not so much about them. It's more about San Francisco. I just think I try so hard because I know how unpredictable the NFL is that I just never feel right picking the teams that were there last year to get back the next year. Maybe 1 or 2. But when I see predictions that say Chiefs Bengals in the AFC Championship game, Eagles 49ers, it's just like, not only are you being a coward, but you fundamentally don't get how the NFL changes from year to year.
Yeah.
3 weeks in, it just feels like we're on a collision course for the Eagles and 49ers again. Like they are just head and shoulders above of the competition in the NFC. And this game and this weekend only further cemented that for me. So that's the Philly take. And their line is just their lines are just so good. They lost Hargrave to their rival in this situation, San Francisco. and they don't skip a beat because everybody was stupid on Javon Carter.
And
now
Hargrave has been awesome this year too.
Yeah, but they don't miss him because they've got Davis and Carter up front.
I know.
And Graham and Cox and all those guys.
Carter, like the highlight of the forced fumble will be the thing that everyone talks about. On the safety, he's getting double teamed and manhandled the two dudes. Like, he's not near the ball, but he falls into the end zone and takes two linemen with him. Like, if they would have run to his side, he would have gotten a safety too. Like, they had three dudes who penetrated into the end zone on that play.
Swift had another huge game. They got him for pennies on the dollar. I'll restate what I.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'll restate what I said on this podcast last week. I don't think Hurts has had a great game yet, and they're still beating teams convincingly.
So the Hurts thing, because I'm seeing it in Chicago. Jalen Hurts is being defended to stop his running game. That's what's happening with Fields. On the zone reads, right? They are not going to the running back. They are staying on the quarterback and saying, you got to give the ball. You got to give the ball. You got to give the ball. So you got to give it to Swift, or in the Bears case, you got to give it to Herbert. And then they're not seeing as much man-to-man defense. They're seeing more zone. So the defensive backs are watching him. So it's like, keep your eyes on Hurts, keep your eyes on Fields. And it's being successful. Like, you have not had a ton of big quarterback runs this year. The difference, of course, is that Hurts is good and a good pocket passer and has two awesome receivers and an amazing offensive line and is doing it. But I think that that's what's happening with Jalen Hurts, is that he is being forced to beat you from the pocket and just with his arm, and he's doing it. But you wouldn't say that Jalen Hurts is a top 5 pocket passing quarterback in the NFL.
No.
What made him a top 5 quarterback in the NFL was that he also had 800 rushing yards last year. And that, through 3 games, has been largely taken away. He still is obviously very effective on those stupid rugby, push, whatever the hell they're calling it, like for the 4th and 1s and all of that stuff. But like, he doesn't have explosive runs. And I think that is why he doesn't look that great so far this year.
All right, let's get to the games we were at. I will let you go first because I had a lot of empathy for you on Sunday that you did this very last second, very rushed trip to Arrowhead to go back to Kansas City, where you used to live and work, to see the Chiefs and Bears. And we talked on Thursday about how, hey, this is now, with all the chaos and everything else that's going on in Chicago, this is now an interesting game because it's put up or shut up time for the Bears. And yeah.
Dude, I'm going to run through my 24 hours for you, okay?
Please.
I'm just going to blitz through it. 6:40 a.m. flight, but at the far airport. So the alarm goes off at 4:30 in the morning. Make the flight, no problem. Get to the rental car, no problem. Go out to a lovely breakfast with my grandfather, who just turned 95, and my mother-in-law. It's lovely. We go pick up the barbecue from my favorite barbecue restaurant, Jack Stack. We get to the tailgate. We meet up with people who I had just like invited us on Twitter. I'm hanging out with old friends. We are shotgunning beers on the hour. We are just drinking our faces off at this tailgate. I'm having a grand old time. We go into the stadium. We're on the side of the stadium where the sun is pelting on you the entire game. I had way too many cocktails, did not urinate for the entire game, very dehydrated. It's 41-0. The story of the stadium is that that Taylor Swift is there. Chiefs fans are taking pity on me for not drafting Pat Mahomes. Like, they're like, oh, well, maybe Justin Fields can be good. I'm like, it's all over, folks. Leave the stadium so hammered that my wife needs to drive us instead of me. And I have let her drive less than 10 times in our relationship because she is not a good driver. She drives us to the hotel where we are supposed to drop our stuff and go out to dinner. I am not in any position to go out to dinner. She has to order room service, like pick up from the restaurant in the airport Marriott, which was not the ideal dinner plan for our one night in Kansas City where we fell in love. She brings the food back to the hotel room. I am passed out on the bed at 8:00, and I eat a spicy chicken sandwich in a comatose state in my bedroom, and we don't get marital happy time for our one night in a hotel room away from the two kids. And the Bears lost 41-10, and they were down 34-0 at halftime.
Yeah, but I think drinking yourself into a stupor was a way of it was avoidance. It was to like not you've blacked out the memory of sitting in there and watching all of the specific plays that led to this epic beatdown.
Dude, I did 4 hours on the game solo today, and we flew out first thing this morning. And I woke up and I was like, I feel great. And Steph was like, yeah, you got 11 hours of sleep. you passed out at 7:45. So yeah, when I rewatched the game this morning, there were a few details that I needed to reconnect. But the Bears are pathetic. They have the worst.
It's not about the details. It's about the macro of the organization and how everything is effed.
Dude, if you take out the two turnovers that they forced off Blaine Gabbert, because Mahomes obviously just sat down in the game. In 3 games so far this year, 0 takeaways, 1 sack, and opponents have converted 27 of 45 third downs. 60% of third downs are being converted. And Fields is 32nd in the league in every passing category that matters. They're the worst offense and the worst defense. They're terrible.
I'm going to make a prediction.
Okay.
I think Caleb Williams is going to stay in school.
No.
Because he doesn't want to play for the Bears.
That's so ridiculous.
No, it's not. Because he's in LA and they're going to pay him a ton of money. And you're going to have Drake May next year as your new quarterback, another North Carolina guy, just like Mitch. And the head coach. No, let me finish. And the head coach is going to be the dude who worked at PFF, who's the offensive coordinator in Houston right now, who's off to a very good start with Stroud. And that's going to be Danny Parkins 2024. Selling himself on Drake May and a guy that used to work for Pro Football Focus.
Let me tell you this right now.
Yep.
If that comes true, First and Pod is canceled. I'll quit. I'm not doing that.
I know one person who might be willing to replace you, who would step right in.
That's fine. The show can go on without me. I won't work with you if that happens.
That beats right now. That beats status quo.
Yeah, but you wouldn't be mocking me for the "I told you so" of my misery of this. You at least are wrong with me on Justin Fields.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I'm taking a massive L.
I mean, listen, I don't think that. I actually think, not that I want to really do too much on this, but like Darnell Wright, who they drafted 10th overall, looks good at right tackle. DJ Moore, we know, is good. They're just not doing anything to help him. If they hired a new coach who would be offensive minded to go with Caleb Williams with the number 1 pick, plus Carolina's pick, which is looking top 5, draft another tackle or draft Marvin Harrison Jr., and you're in the 3rd biggest media market in the country with a global brand, it's actually not a bad position for a rookie to come into.
Well, I don't know if you heard, but Fox and NBC are going to chip in that NIL to make sure for USC's first year in the Big Ten that Caleb Williams is going to be there for that one season.
Well,
doing Heisman House commercials and trying to win a national championship.
I don't want to talk to you anymore. How was Vegas?
I loved it. I had a great time. They won the game. I would like to use a few minutes here to personally congratulate Josh McDaniels on the single worst in-game coaching decision I have ever seen in my life. I never like to do this, which is start my local radio show with the other team. But I had to say today at 2:00, that was I'm still like in a state of shock about this. When he did it the first time, I looked at the person next to me and said, does he think they're down 9 and not 8? Right. And then he did it again. And somebody very astutely called into our show today and said, if he was really going to cut it to 5, why didn't he just decline the penalty when they made the field goal the first time and keep the extra minute? I mean, it's just in the history of the 2-point conversion play, we've never seen that done before, Danny. You have been on this Josh McDaniels thing where it's like
he's terrible.
Yes.
I'm telling you, he's terrible.
Like no team was more incompetent with the lead in the NFL last year. I don't think it was bad luck, the games that they blew in the second half and fourth quarters. Wow. I'm still
dude, hey,
the Steelers benefited from that. They did not play a bad game. I think like it was, for me, they have such rotten experience going to the Pacific time zone, and Ben Roethlisberger never beat the Raiders. He was in Oakland. He was 0-4 against them in his career. So I had a really bad feeling about this game. Pickett threw 2 touchdowns for the first time. He had a passer rating over 100, and TJ Watt looks like he's going to challenge Micah Parsons for the defensive player of the year. I mean,
that was the last thing I wanted to say. Like Watt looks unbelievable. Like it's like when I watch Watt, oh, he's the best defensive player in football. When you watch Parsons, it's he's the best defense. You know what I mean? Like it's neck and neck. And I mean, Myles Garrett's awesome.
And then PFF says if Myles Garrett has 1 tackle in a game, he's actually the best defensive player on the entire planet.
Yeah, you don't like Garrett, but it's pretty good. There's a lot of good ones out there, man. But Watt is special. What are the odds on that actually right now? What's it?
Good question. By the way, I was around Musburger. I saw Brent Musburger on Sunday at 84 years old, watching NFL games. I was practically sitting next to him, Danny, at the Circa Resort and Casino. What a 5-star first-rate operation that is.
Yeah, it's the best.
Were you around Musburger when you were out there?
No, I didn't see.
I didn't know what to do. I wanted to just talk to him about games he called, but then I felt like I was going to be like that old Chris Farley show bit from SNL like 30 years ago where I was.
Yeah, do you remember when you did that? That was awesome.
Yeah. Just like, I think I'm going to leave this old man who was like sweating Lions -3 alone.
Not much of a sweat.
What ended up being not a sweat at all, but that was a really cool.
Did you say anything to him?
I didn't have the balls. He like made a couple offhanded comments to me, and I don't even remember what I said back. I probably made a fool of myself because I was so starstruck.
He did a weekly on our show for a while. A couple years ago. It was awesome.
Mike Tyson, Lil Wayne, Carrie Underwood. Saw all 3 of them at the Raiders-Steelers game, and I was most starstruck by Brent Musburger. That tells you everything you need to know about me.
When you saw Lil Wayne, did you shout out Nick Wright?
No. I again was not in a position to strike up a chat with him.
Okay. Yeah. I'm surprised.
Where do you want to go with the games that we weren't at?
So I grouped a few of them. I made 2 groupings. I did a grouping of 3 games for the big upsets because this was the first bloodbath week we've had in Survivor. 3 big favorites as outright losers. Then I put 2 games together with, I thought, teams that made statements. Okay. And then the rest. Even so, like this might not be in a conventional order for like best game or biggest game, but I did it this way. I thought it was the most compelling. So let's start with the big upsets. Dallas and Arizona. And my question basically is, what the bleep, Dallas? What the bleep? Like I was making the case last week that they had to be number 1 on everyone's power ranking.
What I tell you, I said I thought Arizona might beat them.
And yet you did. And you said, what the hell are you doing? You know better. You think Mike McCarthy stinks. Why are you doing this to yourself? And I was like, they have a higher passing volume than I expected. I got to give the guy some credit. If I had waited one more week, I'd be able to gloat and fully enjoy this Mike McCarthy gack job here. But I feel like I completely undercut my credibility with what I said last week. What do you make of this loss, dude? What do you make of it?
I think the Diggs thing affected them. They can say all they want that it didn't. I think when that happens to you during the week, I think that's a gut wrenching thing. It's not even like, hey, that's football. Things happen. It's non-contact. I think that it just casts a pall over an entire team. I think it takes a special team and a special coach to get over that. Like, I'm hypercritical of Mike Tomlin, but the thing that he did, one of his best wins, in my opinion, is when they were in Cincinnati and Shazier had that neck injury and they came back and won that game. And he allowed his team to not just feel sorry for itself and feel sorry about a serious injury to a teammate. This is obviously not to that extent, but they had all kinds of positive vibes before that happened. And with one practice play, it all changed. And I just think Arizona, this whole thing about how their coach is an idiot, and we saw the cut-ups, and he was not impressive when he talked to the team. But they love the underdog, us against the world thing there. It's obvious. They're using that. No one likes us. They gave him a Gatorade bath after the game. You've got a quarterback that's super smart, that's waited his turn. You do have some skill position players like Hollywood Brown and Moore and Ertz and Connor, who are not terrible players. They've been in the NFL and they've been successful before. And the guy's a pretty good defensive coach. He's not great. We saw that in the Super Bowl, but he can make them better than what they were last year. And it's the Cowboys, who always have a target on their back. And so I think it was just a perfect storm for them.
I didn't want to lay the points, but I didn't see it coming. And we had been talking about how Arizona was plucky and was competitive through the first couple of games. So it's the meat grinder of the NFL, man. Like, the gap between best and worst is not that big. I mean, unless you use Chiefs and Bears as your litmus test.
But here's the problem with that point, though, by you. The Cowboys you and others were putting the Cowboys in that category with the Chiefs, Eagles, and 49ers. And those teams don't lose a game like this one.
I mean, clearly I was wrong. Yeah, the Chiefs lost the game and underperformed against Detroit, who I think is the top 10 team in the NFL. And
they didn't have two of their three best players for that game.
Right, exactly. And still should have won. And played down against Jacksonville. No, you're right. I crowned Dallas too soon. I am an idiot. I was wrong. I still think they're good. I still think they'll be in the playoffs. But I was floored by that one. I did avoid the next one, though. Baltimore and Indy, in terms of like Survivor and stuff like that, because I was scared of Minshew. Because Minshew's actually good. Like, I think Gardner Minshew's the top 32 quarterback in the NFL. Like,
we went over the stats; they're impressive.
Yeah, they really are. But he wasn't the reason. Like, they ran the ball, and my thing for this game, and I'm just curious of your thoughts. Like, and we were obviously both like in non-normal viewing experiences, but I went back and read about it and watched a decent amount.
I watched the entire game at Circa. I would say of the 1:00 games, this is the one I watched the most of.
Okay, well, so the whole point was that Lamar wasn't going to have to run the ball 14 times.
That was their best play in the game.
By far. Like, Lamar was efficient passing, but it was all like real short, easy stuff. I was surprised that Indy was able to play the brand of football that they wanted to and force Baltimore out of what it spent all offseason trying to be.
So Baltimore's first drive was great, and then they never hit that. They never found that again. The scripted plays at the beginning of the game were super successful.
Yep.
And they never got back to that. And I just thought Indianapolis was the more physical team. And if you're John Harbaugh and it's a home game in the rain, and you've been a run-first team and a stop-the-run team since he got there, to lose that game when you had to know, given the weather conditions and who their quarterback was, that was going to be the personality of the game, is a reminder to me that the Ravens are just, they're lucky they'll be lucky to make the playoffs. Obviously, things have gotten easier because of the Burrow injury. But like Lamar Jackson in that offense, they're not going to get to this where they were in his MVP season level. They're just not. For
What
a
happened
variety
to
of
Mark
reasons.
Andrews being the second best tight end in the NFL?
Maybe he's not healthy. He missed the first game. I mean, Flowers, there was an obvious defensive holding call late in the game on Flowers that didn't get flagged, and it would have put Tucker in field goal range. But then again, the dude did miss a 61-yarder at the end of regulation. And Gay, the Colts kicker, set a record for the most 50-yard field goals made in one game. But the biggest story by far of this game was Indy just went in there and physically beat them up on both sides of the ball, which should never happen when you're the Ravens. That's who you are. That's who you've always been. And that team had every reason to pack it in bad weather with their backup quarterback playing. And a team like the Jets or the Bengals should be calling the Colts constantly to get Minshew. I don't get it.
Yes.
They both should.
Yes. I would love to see Minshew on the Jets. That would be fun.
But even Cincinnati is an insurance policy to Burrow. Somebody that they could actually, instead of playing Jake Browning, you'd have somebody dependable behind him.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. He's good. The guy's actually good. We do this once a week. I feel like we should try to limit ourselves to doing it once a week, but I'm the guy who makes the Sunday rundown, so it's really like a barometer for me. Jags Texans. More about the Texans win or the Jags loss?
It's more about the Jags, and I watched a fair amount. The best thing about being at a sports book at 1 o'clock is
so
that
great.
you get everything. And I like
Except
that.
it's at 10 o'clock in Vegas.
I never took myself off East Coast time. I had to watch.
What does that mean?
Well,
so you went to bed at like midnight?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I acted like I was on East Coast time the entire time I was there. Danny, I'm 37 years old and I was by myself, okay? And it allowed for me to have fulfilling sports watching experiences while I was there. The game's more about Jacksonville for this reason. We looked at this game and said, this is the game where Trevor Lawrence reminds people that he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league, right? There's no excuses. It's not Kansas City, where it's a litmus test barometer game. It's not at Indianapolis, where they've had trouble over the years. It's like it's in your home barn against a team that's one of the 5 worst or supposedly 5 worst in the NFL. Please cook them. Please dominate them. And their defense wasn't good either, which is a huge story. But look at Lawrence's stat line, man. He got thoroughly outplayed by a guy making his 3rd start.
All right. So I'm going to come back to Lawrence. Let me because that's the conventional wisdom. That I think people would be surprised that there's even an argument that it's more about the Texans than the Jaguars. But dude, CJ Stroud has over 900 passing yards in 3 games. Will Anderson is 3rd in the NFL at pass rush win rate. What if they're right? What if they're right? What if they did that, got the best quarterback in the class, and in one draft, got the best player at the 2 positions that are most impactful for winning? Like, we have to at least be open to the possibility. These guys are drafted in the top 5. We have to be open to the possibility that these guys are great. We have, right, 2nd and 3rd overall. I mean, that would be a pretty big story.
No doubt. I mean, I thought that Stroud's numbers in the first 2 games were largely stat padding variety.
Sure. It was in a blowout, prevent defense. I understand.
But dude,
he looked the part.
He looked very, very put together and poised in this game. He was not that it's an intimidating place to play at all or anything, but he looked like he was a veteran quarterback who knew exactly. And he got help. And you get a kickoff return for a touchdown.
I understand.
Tank Dell had a broken play touchdown. I mean, some things happen. That's how you get a big upset like this. You got to hit on 2 or 3 of those types of plays to win a game. But I'd be lying to you if I didn't walk away from that game feeling very good about Stroud and what his potential is as a quarterback.
We like to be early on things. We pride ourselves on paying attention to all of the teams, not just the ones that are going to be discussed on the national shows. Like, we have to at least be open to the possibility that the Texans got this right. As for Trevor Lawrence, I don't know if you like the EPA stats, the expected points added.
Sure.
I think they're pretty good. I think they're pretty good metrics for teams, individuals, all that stuff. You want the full list of quarterbacks worse than Trevor Lawrence through 3 games, expected points added?
Zach Wilson.
Yep.
Justin Fields.
Yep.
And then pull a name out of a hat. I don't think it's Pickett anymore, but it could be.
Pickett, Tannehill, Bryce Young, and Joe Burrow, but that's from before tonight's game. So that obviously will change. Dude, that is horrible.
With all the weapons that they have there. And, I think what's going to happen is I think Doug Peterson is going to quietly take the play calling away from Zach Taylor's brother. And he gave it to him, I think, with the understanding of this will help the guy get a head coaching job. But you can't be thinking about it that way right now. I mean, that to me has to be down the list of priorities in the grand scheme of things. They need something to get that guy who looked at the end of last year, those 2 playoff games, like he was destined for greatness. They've got to do something to make him more comfortable because their offensive line isn't great, but that's not an excuse for them to look this bad through 3 games offensively.
No, and just to be clear, I think Trevor Lawrence will be fine, but he's been awful through 3 weeks. All right, we probably need to pick up the pace a little bit or we're going to go 90 minutes.
Miami and Denver, I'm shocked, is this far down your rundown. We had a team score 70 points, bro.
Okay. I only put it this far down because of the 3 huge upsets. And I think that the wins and losses should still be the basis of what the biggest stories are of the week. And those were 3 huge upsets. But yeah, man, scoring 70 in the NFL deserves to probably be the biggest story of the week for an individual performance. And I don't think an argument can be made through 3 weeks that anyone other than Tua should be MVP favorite, which he is. Tyreek Hill should be offensive player of the year favorite, which he is. And that that Mike McDaniel should be coach of the year favorite, which he is. They are the story of the NFL through 3 weeks. They might not be the best team.
Josh McDaniels would have kicked field goals on all those drives, and they would have beaten them.
Yes, Mike McDaniel, who the Bears didn't even see as being worthy of interviewing when they hired Matt Eberflus.
So they did this without Waddle too, which makes it even more impressive that that guy didn't play one of the 10 or 15 best receivers in the entire NFL. You just laid out a point for Houston by saying we have to allow for the possibility of, and then went on to make your point. I think we have to allow for the possibility that Sean Payton is an Urban Meyer situation in Denver. I know that Meyer going college to the NFL is totally different, and Payton has won a Super Bowl and was largely successful in New Orleans, but I can't think of many times other than when we've had horrible coaching situations like Meyer, where a team is clearly quitting on its, I guess I should say, coach. And they quit in that game. They laid down to give up that many rushing yards and 700 yards of total offense. You said the margin of the NFL is razor thin between the best team and the worst team.
This is a Big 12 score. This is
it's a Big 12 team against Immaculate Word or something. Or Abilene Christian, not another Big 12 team. Maybe like Kansas when they were winning 1 game a year, but this should never, ever, ever happen. And when it happens, the organization that loses by 50 needs to look itself in the mirror. The guy set a horrible tone for the season with the comments he made about the team he inherited. And I said to you, I thought that was him being completely honest and brutally honest and setting everybody up for the possibility that they were going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL this year. And so he could say, blame the guy that was here before me, not me.
Well, so we're going to get to it obviously more in the Thursday look ahead pod, but it was just like a sneaky big part of my show today. Have you seen the look ahead line for Denver, Chicago?
It's 3.5.
Correct.
Denver.
In Chicago.
Yeah. That's a low point for the Bears. An underdog at home to a team that lost by half a century.
Dude.
By a 50 burger.
That is an 0-3 team. An 0-3 team that just gave up a 70 piece is a 3.5 point favorite in your building. That is.
Yeah. And then I thought Peyton after the game of the press conference looked like a total tool.
Yeah, he did. That was he's grasping. He's grasping. But Miami's incredible, man. All right, I want to ask you this one. Buffalo curb stomped Washington. Last week, you were like basically saying that one team in the NFL could win a Super Bowl. Are you willing to group Buffalo into the teams who possibly could win a Super Bowl?
No.
Oh my God.
I'm not.
That is so ridiculous.
No, it's not, dude. You're falling. This is what's going to happen. You're going to come on the podcast after the Miami game and say, I did it again. A really good team beat a bad team by a lopsided margin, and you bought into it heavily. No,
First of all, I like Washington, so I don't think Washington's a really bad team. They had a really bad game, but I could obviously
they turned the ball over a million times, and they actually drove the ball a number of times and turned it over in the red zone. Like Sam Howell was very reckless. It was Josh Allen-esque in a lot of ways, as a matter of fact.
Okay, but so 37-3 and 38-10 the last 2 weeks. Yes, against Commanders and Raiders, but it does nothing for you that this team can be electric offensively and be a contender once again in the AFC. Does nothing for you.
They can beat the teams they're supposed to beat.
Okay.
You disagree, clearly.
I mean, yeah. I framed the question to try to checkmate you, and you won't go down. So, Buffalo, Miami, you think Miami crushes them?
I don't think they crush them, but I'll say this. If the Bills just win the game, they don't even have to blow them out. If the Bills win the game, I'm going to be willing to come on a future podcast and say I was wrong about them.
Okay. All right.
But that needs to happen.
What if they lose by 3, 37-34?
Just more Bills in big spots in big games. Can't get it done.
Got it.
Jets and Patriots. More Zach Wilson incompetence. Although I will say Randall Cobb should have caught that Hail Mary. And if he does, it's a totally different. Did you see that play?
Yeah, I did.
You were beer bonging at the time.
Dude,
so you missed it live.
I played a lot of catch up during these Monday night games for some of these games that I didn't watch. There was a TV at the tailgate, but it was I've been playing catch up. But I did.
Bill Belichick isn't making jokes about Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift if Randall Cobb's able to hold on to that ball at the end of the game. I heard something on the Kirk Cousins thing to the Jets that I find very interesting from someone I trust. They think that Cousins would invoke his no trade clause and would not go to New York here if the Viking season goes off the rails, because he's so good with the business side of sports that going there, learning a new system midstream in New York, the possibility of putting up down numbers, he thinks would actually financially hurt him in the long run more than if he just say he rides it out in Minnesota. They go like 7-10, but he throws 33 or 34 touchdown passes again. He knows he'll get paid big by somebody this offseason and thinks that going to the Jets would actually do more damage to him looking for a contract this offseason. I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, he's a legend at the bank. I would like to think that he would want a chance to win, but Jets might not be that too if he doesn't think he would be good there. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I wonder how much of it would be purely financially motivated, or if it would be, I also don't think I would be good there for A, B, or C reason, and it would hurt me financially. But it's a very interesting. I mean, I feel like that's died down a lot since week one. The Jets have been steadfast. I don't know how you can do it though. Like, I don't think you have to trade for Kirk Cousins, a super expensive quarterback who you
we
can't
brought up Minshew.
That's what I'm saying. Like, there are guys who are worse than Kirk Cousins, cheaper than Kirk Cousins, and at least give you a fighting chance to get the ball to Garrett Wilson 8 times a game and maybe score 23 points. You know, like, who's another one that would be a good idea? Like, I mean, we've talked about Tannehill. I know, but Jacoby Brissett.
I would not mind that one. I wouldn't mind that at all. I thought he was good in Cleveland last year, and I was never a Jacoby Brissett guy. But the times I saw him in Cleveland last year, I thought he was actually pretty good.
Yeah, me too. I mean, obviously Dalton was just an upgrade over Bryce in the short term. We'll get to that game in a second. But, you know, like, Zach Wilson is not the 35th best quarterback in the world. So there are definitely backups that would be a significant upgrade for a team that's really trying to win right now. All right, you mentioned him a little bit on the Viking side of this. Chargers, Vikings. Do you feel like the Chargers saved their season?
No, I don't. You know why? Because it was way more about the Vikings losing the game and all of their gaffes, all their red zone blunders and mishaps. You had 2 things happen in this game that were classic Chargers. Number 1, Mike Williams done for the year.
Yep.
Tears his ACL. So you lose him. Everything about the Chargers this year that was said in the preseason was with the caveat, if they stay healthy, we know they always get hurt, but you can't predict injuries. Well, Mike Williams seems to unfortunately get hurt all the time, and usually in a quite serious manner. So that's a huge bummer. Quentin Johnson, who I thought was going to be a big lift for them, can't even get on the field. Their number 1 pick, wide receiver from TCU, who I thought was just going to be, I can't believe I'm going to say this out loud, but I saw kind of like poor man Randy Moss qualities in him, just very tall guy who runs really fast and is a deep threat downfield, not like 50-50 ball, but just go get it, catch and run.
Well, I mean, obviously, I mean, he had 3 targets, 2 catches, 10 yards. It is within the realm of possibility that his role in the offense increases. But yeah, right now they're probably going to go bigger sets, multiple tight ends. Palmer will get more targets. But I mean, at least the guy who got hurt, the guy they drafted in the first round, plays his exact position. So there's at least a possibility that they could salvage it.
But I think the even bigger thing is Staley went for it on 4th and 1 inside his own 30 and didn't get it. And the numbers back him up going for it. It was him going back in time to his rookie year as a head coach when he would do that routinely. But the fact that he did it and it backfired, I just think that that's going to have long-term ramifications on his decision-making in future games. And I think he's going to cower again and go right back to his conservative ways of last year because of that. Because of all the heat he got for it. Oh, like they won in spite of you. The Chargers should have lost. Thank God the Viking, that kind of thing. I think the guy's going to go right back into his shell because of that. And I think that that's going to hurt. The Chargers need a legitimate head coach so bad, but I don't think that their ownership group wants to pay the big money for an established coach. They're going to have to go the young route. They're just going to have to hire one of these geek guys. Maybe they'll hire the PFF guy and you'll lose out on him and maybe hire somebody else's defensive assistant. Danny.
That's not funny.
Maybe you can get Bill Cowher out of retirement.
Promote Kellen Moore. We got to go faster.
Promote Luke Getsy.
dude, like once an hour, I get a tweet. Remember when you wanted to fire Matt Eberflus to promote Luke Getsy?
Okay,
they're both terrible, and I stand by believing in the offensive guy more than the defensive guy.
Explain what you wrote to me on the Green Bay New Orleans game. Green Bay coming back from down 17 to beat the Saints without Derek Carr.
Okay. So what I wrote is, I'm terrified that a Poni Kenny Pickett take might actually be true about Jordan Love. And you've had so many Kenny Pickett takes that doesn't narrow it down for you. And I just want, for the record, like, I don't want this clip to be one that gets clipped and goes viral, because this will hurt my credibility with the local audience.
All the more reason to play it.
Do you remember when you said that Kenny Pickett had some Joe Burrow vibes?
Yes.
I'm at least a little worried that Jordan Love might have some of that. Dude, he doesn't have his best players. He's playing a top 10 defense. He's down 17 points in the fourth quarter, and he wins. I know the Saints miss a field goal that would have ended up winning the game. He made big throw after big throw. Some of them were caught. Some of them drew pass interference. He's throwing to Romeo Doubs and Jaden Reed, whatever the hell that guy's name is, without Aaron Jones, without Bakhtiari, without Watson. The only word I can describe it is poise, because he did not look great early in the game. But, like, there is no rattle to this dude. There's no rattle to him. So, obviously, Joe Burrow's the number one pick in the draft. I'm not saying he's going to be that. But, like, if you are a 10 out of 10 between the ears at quarterback in the NFL, you have an incredibly high floor. And it's been 4 starts, 3 this year, and I haven't seen that dude. He lost to Atlanta, but he completed 66% of his passes, had 3 touchdowns, no picks. He curb stomped the Bears, and he had a fourth quarter comeback against the top 10 defense. 2 of those 3 games without his 3 or 4 best players on offense. I'm very impressed, and I hate that I am as impressed as I am. I hate it.
So, do you know the pitcher Charlie Morton in the major leagues? He's been around for a while. He's had a really good, solid career. So he was with the Pirates. I'm going to make this analogy quick because this is a football podcast, but just hear me out for a second. When I first got to Pittsburgh, he was terrible, and he was one of their worst pitchers. And he and the pitching coach just decided mechanically, let's just copy Roy Halladay. Let's just watch him and let's duplicate his delivery. Like everything, wind up, where, like, arm angle, slot, everything, and try to use his exact sequencing of pitches and just see where it gets you. And it completely changed the guy's career around. Now, he's ended up adapting and evolving. He's had several incarnations since then. But that's what originally got him on track. He just decided to try to be someone who was already really, really good and the best at what that person did. I think Jordan Love is doing that with Aaron Rodgers. His body language on the field, his motions, his throwing style, like even when he hands the ball off or does a play action fake, he looks exactly like the guy. It's like he's trying to do an Aaron Rodgers impression, and it's working. And I don't know how long that's going to last, if he can just be a facsimile of Aaron Rodgers his entire career. But I am just so struck by that. Like, it looks like he is just trying to copy exactly what Aaron Rodgers, not just his game planning and prep during the week and stuff, like he's trying to look like him on the field, Danny, when he plays.
I notice it on the play action fakes for sure. He clearly studied Rodgers. Rodgers is one of the best, if not the best ever at that. So yeah, the whole thing is grotesque. I really, truly hate it.
Seattle, Carolina.
Okay.
You want to brag about how you like the Seahawks again, is what
Yes, I
the
do.
question
Well,
basically
and I'm
was.
thrilled that the Panthers continuing to lose to help Marvin Harrison Jr. become a Bear with a top 5 pick. But I loved Seattle
So
coming
then
in.
Drake May can throw him the ball next year.
Shut up. I loved Seattle's offense coming into the year. They score 37 in a game where they had to kick 5 field goals. They're moving the ball the entire game. So my question to you is, Miami's going to be the best offense in the NFL, at least through 3 weeks. It'd be crazy to say anyone other than them. Obviously, things can get hurt, long time left, all those caveats, whatever. Are you willing to say right here, right now, that there is at least a chance that Seattle has the best offense in the NFC at the end of the year?
No, because I don't think Geno Smith is going to be able to do that. Kenneth Walker has picked up where he left off at the end of last year.
And Metcalf and Lockett look awesome. And
I was just going to say, Smith and Jigba hasn't even really gotten involved in their offense whatsoever. And I would think at some point, Charbonneau, the other kid who they drafted in the second round, will at least have some kind of 1-2 punch setup. But I think the offensive coordinator is great. He'll be a head coach. I would try to find a way to keep him there with Pete Carroll. I don't think it'll happen. I think he'll get another job this offseason and be someone. Maybe it'll be where you are. Maybe you'll have Shane Waldron next year. I think that he is, for me, he's the Seattle version of what Brian Dable was to Josh Allen in Buffalo. And I think that that guy right now might be the best assistant coach in the entire league. And good on Pete Carroll or whoever made that decision in Seattle to do that, because Pete Carroll, defensive coach, and they had gone through like the retread offensive coordinators, your Brian Schottenheimers, guys like that. And in his 70s, he pivoted to one of these guys that came from, I think, the Rams coaching tree. And I don't think Geno Smith puts up these numbers without him.
Okay, but so then explain why the Seahawks can't be the best offense in the NFC.
Because I think their quarterback has a ceiling.
Okay, but then who is going to be the best? Because
San Francisco, who scored 30 points in all 3 games.
Okay, but their quarterback is Brock Purdy.
Yeah, guess what, Danny? This is going to surprise you. I'm starting to do a little bit of 180 on the Brock Star. I'm starting to walk back.
He had three passes that were interceptable in that game.
I know, Danny. I said that on the Thursday podcast, but I'm starting to allow for the possibility, as you like to say, that the guy is actually, I think Orlovsky called him a top 5
Thursday and Monday? He hasn't played.
True. That's a very good point. I'm sleep deprived right now. Cut me some slack here. 57 minutes into this podcast.
Geno Smith can't lead the best offense in the NFC, but Brock Purdy can. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Detroit, Atlanta. A workmanlike 20-6 win where some things went wrong, but they didn't Lions all over themselves. I'm curious what Detroit winning that style of game tells you about this version of the Lions, if anything.
Okay, so Arizona upset Dallas, and a team scored 70 points and won by 50. But I think this was my favorite win of the week for a team, because Detroit beat the Chiefs in part because of what the Chiefs offense didn't do in that game. But I kind of felt it was more self-inflicted wounds by the Chiefs than it was great defense. Tony gift wrapped the pick 6. You know, the wide receivers
didn't have Kelsey, didn't have Jones.
Yeah. Desmond Ridder
is terrible.
Is not very good.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, huge news there. But they held Bijan Robinson, I think, to under, I might have been 3.4 yards per carry or something like that. And I just thought that Atlanta was going to go up there and run all over Detroit. I thought they were just going to, as long as the game score didn't get to a point where, you know, Detroit had scored 30-something points and it needed to be a shootout. I just thought Atlanta was going to have their way on the ground against the Lions. So for Detroit to know what was coming and shut it down the way that they did, whether it was schematics or I wasn't watching that game intensely, but I think that showed that there's another dimension to this team. They needed to improve their defense big time from last year, and I would say 3 games in, they've got to feel much better about their
Yeah, I would need
situation.
an explanation if I was doing radio in Atlanta as to how you could have Desmond Ridder throw 38 passes and have Bijan Robinson get 10 rushing attempts.
Yeah, great point. Really good
Like,
point.
you know what I mean? Like it made and it wasn't like Algier had a great game because he's pretty talented. Like he had 7 carries for 12 yards.
How many touches did Robinson get in the pass game?
4 catches on 6 targets. So 14
So he touched
touches.
the ball. So he touched the ball 14 times.
Yeah. Just low scoring game. But I'm with you, man. Like I think the Lions, I mean, obviously, again, this is somewhat confirmation bias for me, but winning in different ways, biding your time, like David Montgomery out in that game, don't have Jameson Williams. I still think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be an absolute stud. But they got to get him the ball more in the passing game.
I like Laporta. I think that tight end's got a bright future for them. That was a really good pick.
I think he's been like the number 1 fantasy tight end. All right, number 2. He's been absolutely ridiculous. And yeah, 11 targets in the game. All right, last game, last but not least. Your Browns against our Titans. How far can Cleveland's defense carry them this year? What can they do? Like, what's their ceiling with a great defense like that?
I think it's probably 9 wins and hope that Joe Burrow's cap isn't right. Win the head-to-head matchups against Baltimore and try to get into the playoffs as the second place team in the AFC North. I'm still not buying Watson whatsoever. I still think that the Chubb injury is going to be one that bites them, even though running back injuries should not be season enders. I don't like the coach. Garrett had 3.5 sacks, so he did much better than he did the previous Monday against the Steelers. Schwartz is, I'm stunned that he wasn't a defensive coordinator somewhere else, that he was available, because he's a huge upgrade for them. He's got guys in the right places where they need to be now. Because they had players on defense last year. They just couldn't figure out a way to use them properly. So this to me was more, I like the Browns laying 3.5 because I just didn't think the Titans were going to be able to follow up what they did in overtime against the Chargers and do it in back-to-back weeks. And I thought it was kind of a get-right game for Cleveland after blowing it against the Steelers the week before. But yeah, it's not enough for me yet, Danny, to think that like Watson is cured of some of the things that we bitched about with him.
Yeah, I mean, he had that one absolutely ridiculous play where he threw it backwards when he was getting a sack and it turned into a fumble. You know what I mean? Like that was like a comedic play. But by far his best game of the year, probably his best game as a Brown.
It is.
And doing it when you have that much of a coaching disadvantage with Stefanski against Vrabel, I got to be honest, I was pretty damn shocked at this. I mean, that was as thorough of a defensive ass kicking. I mean, dude, Tennessee had 94 total yards. They had the ball for 21 minutes. They had 26 rushing yards. They had 6 first downs. There were no turnovers in the game.
Well, the bottom line with what you just said then is, and we'll talk about this on Thursday, but just quickly, they should beat the Ravens at home next week. If their defense is as advertised, you're saying how far can it carry them? You've got a home game against a division rival whose offense really has not clicked yet. They don't know what they want to be. They reverted back to Lamar Jackson being a runner the last 2 weeks to try to win games. If your defense is as advertised, win that game at home on Sunday.
I agree. We'll talk about it more on Thursday. And listen, I don't think Tennessee's very good, but Tannehill's been one of the worst players in the league this year. But they have DeAndre Hopkins, they have Burks, they have Derrick Henry.
They find a way to stay in games and be competitive, and they weren't in this game, is what you're saying.
They looked like they had never played football. Like they were completely. Dude, it is difficult to have 100 yards of offense as a team. I mean, the Bears are pathetic, and they had 99 yards passing against the Chiefs. Yeah, some of it was in garbage time, but garbage time yards, you know what I mean? Like 6 first downs in an NFL game? That's hard to do when Derrick Henry's on your team. So I thought that was a statement by the Browns defense. Look at us. Sleep deprived, Vegas, Kansas City, hangovers other than
I think the moral of the story here is that you got after it much harder than I did in Kansas City. And I think I took off as a heavy favorite being in Vegas to drink the most and party the hardest. And the fact that you had your wife drive you to the hotel, I think, is my favorite comment that's gotten made, maybe on this podcast ever, by you, that it was that bad. So
it was embarrassing. It was not good.
All right, dude. We'll talk again. Back on our normal schedule, Thursdays and Sundays.
Yep. Thanks to Spencer Ray, our producer. Please tell a friend about this podcast. Make it worth our while. First and Pod. Peace.